Hello, so for video exam 2, I'm going to be talking about determining death and kind of like the differences in what letting die and killing kind of is. So, the ethical distinction of killing is kind of saying like someone is taking that there's responsibility for letting someone die or ending someone's life, but with letting die, there's like not as much like responsibility in that person's death or them like kind of dying. And there's a couple people that object to this and like kind of think that there shouldn't be much of a distinction. The first guy is Rachel's, and he has a big objection to like letting die and killing. He thinks that there should not be no split in the two, and he also believes that killing is a little more humane than letting die, which is crazy. But he thinks that there isn't a distinction, that the distinction is flawed, and that any argument that's kind of for the distinction of the two is also flawed. So he believes that, like, Solmacy's distinction, for example, is very flawed because Solmacy kind of distincts the two into two different, like, definitions. So going into that, Solmacy, he believes that we can distinct the two. And so here's the definition for killing and letting die. So for killing, his definition is an act in which an agent creates a new lethal pathophysiological state with the specific intention and acting of thereby causing a person's death. So what he's saying is that someone is intentionally trying to stop someone's life with the purpose or hope that they are going to die. That's what he means by killing. And with letting die, he's saying that it's an act in which an agent either acts to remove an intervention that forestalls a pre-existing fatal condition or refrains from action that would forestall a pre-existing fatal condition. So like for this one, it's kind of talking about like withdrawing care versus withholding care, like maybe taking someone off of dialysis like for kidney treatment because they're suffering, they're in pain. He kind of wants them to just let them die instead of like physically like killing someone with like a knife. Like he's not, his definition of letting die is more like kind of taking a step back or withdrawing care, like a pre-existing supposed to be fatal condition, like they're already probably going to die. And so with all of this, Rachel's kind of like death, like killing, okay, that's kind of humane. Letting die, absolutely not. But Solmacy, his two are kind of like permissible. So he's saying that all killing is wrong, no matter what. While he believes that some letting die is wrong, but some letting die is okay. Instead between like knowing that if it's okay or not okay, it's based on intention. So like if someone's intentionally trying to kill you, but in a letting die scenario, like the kidney example from earlier, he would say that's wrong. Versus if we're just trying to do like if you're in hospice, like just slowly you're about to kick the bucket, but not quite. But we kind of just take you off the couple pain meds you're on, then that's kind of more like morally accepted by Solmacy's kind of distinction. And he's pretty much saying that like that's more okay and more ethical than killing someone. That's always wrong. So that's kind of a little bit about letting die and killing and like kind of Rachel's and Solmacy's like two big distinctions of like what they believe they are. So moving on to determining death, there's two big ways that today in society that we kind of determine death. The very first one I've always been using has been cardiopulmonary, like the criteria of that. And what that means is like it's irreversible cessation of like the cardiopulmonary tracts and the heart and all of that. So it's pretty much saying that like your heart is done beating, the blood to your veins is done, the blood from to your veins to your heart is like there's no cardiopulmonary activity whatsoever, and it cannot be reversed through any type of like medical criteria. And for there's the other one that we're using now these days. It's a little newer. It's death by neurological criteria. And what this is saying is all irreversible, again, cessation of the brain and the brain stem. So that's what that's saying. There's no activity in the brain or the brain stem. There's no way to reverse it in a sense through surgery or procedures. It's completely done and completely like dead by the brain. So the neurological one is a little more new. It's a little more sketchy in a sense. People aren't very comfortable with it as they are with the cardio criteria that's been practiced a lot longer than the neurological one. But they're both technically two ways to determine if a patient is actually dead. And so with this is like a social construct behind it. And what that really is saying is like it's hard to get an exact definition because we don't really know like what's really going on with death. Like we know like we see a flat line on the EKG monitor, we see a flat line, we see no heartbeat, no rhythm, like the brain activity is low, but what actually happens to a person like in those couple minutes or seconds when they're dying, we're not really sure. So it's kind of a big social construct, and we kind of have to like mold these definitions into what we kind of know and we can prove. So with this, they kind of work for us right now just because we're not 100% like correct. We don't know if we're correct or if we're wrong about these definitions and about what actually is going on. So we kind of have to just like go with the flow in a sense about it, because it's like we're not really sure. We can only know so much as humans, and with death, it's really hard. And so right now, it's just what's used for society to kind of like determine or kind of put a easier like or simplified way to a very confusing and ambiguous and complex part of the life, which is death, that we all kind of have to go through. It's very important to know and learn about, but it's really hard to kind of put like a hard definition on it because we just don't really know enough about it. We have to socially make a good enough kind of reason or explanation that appeals to us. And so with this determining death comes a couple of problems with organ donation. Between the two, the neurological criteria for death, it fits right on in there with organ donation, because it's kind of like a dead donor rule, which is saying like the patient must be dead by one of these definitions in order to donate the organs. And so with the neurological way, it's kind of like perfect. We're not donating anyone the brain anyway, so the brain's dead, the organs are probably still functioning. We can go out and donate those organs. But in the contrary, the cardiovascular death criteria is kind of iffy because the definition is like complete irreversible cessation of the cardiopulmonary tract. But if we're trying to donate a heart from someone that's like cardiovascularly dead, then it's like, won't that kind of contradict the definition of irreversible cessation? So like if we put a heart to someone else that was dead, from someone that was dead, and now the heart works, now that's reversible cessation. And was that patient really dead? That's kind of the big argument about it. It was like, well, if we can reverse it, then it's kind of against the big definition. And were they really dead if it was reversible? Because it must be irreversible for them to be deemed as dead through like the cardiovascular way. And so it's really hard to kind of determine like what to do in that situation with organ donation. Is very complicated, but it's all about like adhering to the dead donor rule, because the dead donor rule has kind of been like the main base of like how we can donate organs based on people being dead. And so I guess if we follow the definitions of determining death and we can follow the definitions of the dead donor rule, then everything should be fine and perfect. But it kind of gets a little, a little gray matter when it is talking about like heart transplant from someone that's cardiovascularly dead. So thank you. That is my video exam 2.